Okay, and welcome back. Hour number 2. Very important information for all of us, and especially those who are involved with pension funds. Wow. The state of our pension funds is, in fact, the title of an extraordinary report by Catherine Austin Fitts. You can find it. Just scroll down at Rense.com and keep scrolling before the headline news start, and you'll find the most politically astute or giving dairy cow I've ever seen on my website. The Solari report. That's quite a cow you got there, kid.
Did you check out the spots?
Underneath
you
it?
notice the spots? The spots on the cow.
I didn't until just now. How could I miss that? Oh man, I did. That's I'm sorry.
The world is being harvested.
It sure is. Well, there's the full circle on the illustration. That's some of the greatest political art I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's good. It's real. We do our wrap-up covers are fantastic, and we work very hard on them. And that's the first thing we do, Jeff, when we're working on a wrap-up is we come up with a cover, and that's what the whole team kind of invents into.
How interesting! I never would have guessed that.
Yeah, it's our vision of what we're trying to accomplish with the wrap-up, because we pick out, we review news, trends, and stories in each wrap-up. So we talk about what were the most important stories of the quarter of the year. And we go through financial markets, and then in the annual wrap-up, we do scenario planning and design for investment strategy and financial planning. But then the last thing we do is we pick out a theme, which is very deep and important, and we try and go way beyond and way deeper than the noise in the media to help you see the real deal.
You sure did this time. Wow.
Oh, I think we do every time.
No, I've not had one this graphic, though. I think this cow idea is absolutely brilliant. And if you're not able to see it, you've got to get on Rense and take a look. Or go to Solari. Go to Solari.com.
Well, our website went down on Friday, so it's not up. We, in fact, it's one of the reasons I made the pension story. It's going to be all week because I made a command decision not to bring up the old site. We've been working on a new one, and I said, something, we're just going to launch the new one early. So it's going to take a week, and we hope to have it up by Friday. It may take through the weekend. It's a pretty big job we had to accelerate the schedule. And it's interesting because I've had subscribers tell me that literally 50% of their YouTube channels went offline or were pushed offline by YouTube in the very hour that our site went down.
YouTube is one of the most villainous, dark forces on the planet. They are eradicating an awful lot of valuable material. They're just deleting it, threatening. It's not good.
Well, here's what I don't understand, because I've never depended on YouTube, and I don't post on Facebook. We've never taken, ads on YouTube or any. I just thought all those guys are completely untrustworthy. Why would you build your business model around them? Why would you ever depend on them?
That's the perfect question. Why give them the time of day? They're crooks. They're lousy. I don't want to get into it, but they are the worst. Sorry, all of them. Many of the major tentacles upon which we rely to get information are run by the enemy. All right? They're not our friends.
But here's what I've never understood, because, I said in 1998, you got to get your money out of the big banks, and you can't depend on these jokers. So, the reality is if everybody in America just pulled their money out of the big banks and went to a good community bank or a good credit union, it would make enormous political difference.
Huge.
If the Fed, if the Federal Reserve has to negotiate with 25,000 little banks as opposed to a few big ones, it makes an enormous difference. And yet I continue to see the most sophisticated people who keep banking at the big banks.
Oh, where do you bank? J.P. Morgan, Goldman, Bank of America.
Right.
What is wrong with these people? Look, there used to be a term called antitrust, and it used to be enforced. And the Clintons, of course, deregulated everything, and there went the media. And when's the last time you even heard of an antitrust law that had a chance being introduced in Congress?
Yeah.
I can't remember any. It's been forever. So look for the cow.
Well, but here's the thing: we have the power. We have the power.
Well, yeah, but don't tell anybody. That's the biggest secret. They don't want us to know. God, we do have the power. We could pull our money out of these banks. You're right. We could bring them to their knees, but no one's going to do it.
Absolutely.
How are we going to get to the people?
I continue to be an optimist. I think once enough, because I'm watching a lot of people get mad, Jeff, and they're
furious.
finally beginning to realize that you have to cut off their money. It's like anybody who's been a mother knows sometimes you just have to cut off the child's allowance, right?
Yep.
There you go.
Okay. But we have to cut off more than their allowance. We got to cut off their livelihood for a while and make them understand who the boss is. I don't know how else to
they
do
understand that. That's why YouTube is, throwing Richie Allen off of YouTube. Because they cannot. Here's the thing, and the pension fund article that you can link to from your site is about controlling the capital centrally. And the key to controlling the capital centrally, you know what you have to do if you want to control the capital centrally?
Tell me.
You have to control the narrative centrally.
How do you do that without access to the mainstream media, or at least a piece of it? We've got the internet,
right.
Yeah, I know.
Well, but here's the thing. These guys can control the capital because they can control the narrative. And they're losing control of the narrative. That's why they're throwing so many, all the things they've done to you or to me or to Richie Allen or the folks on YouTube, they've done because they are desperately trying to control the narrative, because they know if they can't control the narrative, they're going to lose control of the capital.
You know what they did to me?
Control of the capital. Oh, I know what they did to you.
That too. But 2 weeks ago, PayPal cut me off completely, cut off all my ability to sell anything, subscriptions. So I went and got another service. Took 2 weeks, cost over $2,000. They cut me off. Because they're all owned by the same, it's a multi-headed dragon, okay? Right. So now I've got to find another one that hopefully will be small enough to where they won't cut me off. In the meantime, my people are all mailing their orders in. That's wonderful. But we want to get back to where we can take credit cards. We will, maybe another week or two. Right. But they're doing that. And then,
unbelievable.
On top of that, my webmaster, James, of over 20 years, had a severe medical issue come up, and he's got to have major surgery, and I hope all of you will hold a thought for him on the 15th. And so I've been without a webmaster for a week. I had to hire some independents at X and Y and Z an hour to put the news up, and it has been a real challenge. But we got to think about James and getting him well. So it's a mechanical thing. It can be fixed, and I just hope it all goes well. So it's been a real challenging 2 weeks for me. You've been through it for 10 years. My 20. God, 20? What 20. You went through is not, that's just not even doable. And
but here's the thing. It's been spiritual warfare the whole way.
Yes, ma'am.
And the reality is I continue to be a tremendous optimist. And one of the reasons I'm an optimist is our little team has done such a great job over the last week, and we're all laughing. We're all in a state of complete amusement because we know that the worse it gets, it's because they're losing control of the narrative, and I think that's fantastic.
That's a wonderful way to look at that. I'm going to adopt that. Thank you.
The Shrika meter is on high volume and is running scared. So keep it up. Keep up the pressure.
Good job. All right. When you look for the dairy cow, and you look, the cow, if you can't see this, is the dairy cow standing there. The guy's milking the cow. The milk's going into the bucket. From the bucket, it goes through a tube, underground through a meter, and it's dispersed to 5 major issues. One of which is a milk carton. The others are tell us what the others are.
Well, one is Area 51, so sort of the sort of secret installations.
Black Ops.
One,
trillions.
Right.
Whatever.
Right. One is wait a minute. Let me see. I'm going to have to do it on
delivered to
website.
Central banks. That's number 2.
Yeah. So one is the central banks using the money to manipulate the market.
And us. Deliver to Mr. Global. That's number 3.
Right, so that's the dividends. Wherever the dividend goes from the planet Earth REIT, that's where it goes. And then 1 to the secret space program.
Yep.
So, I would include under Area 51 the underground bases. And then the last place is it goes into a milk carton.
An actual milk carton.
The missing children. Right, the missing children on it.
It's called pedophilia, child theft, just sacrifice, evil, dark, ugly. This is
right. And part of this picture is to say, because I've used this analogy for years, or metaphor for years, that we're constantly being told, oh, you haven't saved enough, you haven't saved enough. And, my message is, well, wait a minute, we've been saving a lot. There's a hole in the bucket.
I got a hole in my bucket. Let me tell you, I do my best. The more money I earn, the more I have to pay to the feds. Right. And it's a long story, but it's not a pretty one. So this graphic has an awful lot of meaning for many people. Many people. Right,
because if you drill down and you look at individual and family budgets, everyone is grappling with an enormous strain. And you really see it when you see the pension funds. And I believe it's tremendously important to change the narrative on the pension funds now before the heat gets too high.
Or there won't be anything left at all. They'll take it all.
Not only will there not be nothing left, but I have more ambition for the pension funds than that, because one of the things I bring this down to is, the underfunding on the pension funds right now is approximately $5 trillion. Well, Jeff, there's $21 trillion missing from HUD and DOD.
Thanks to you and that professor, HUD and DOD looted, stole $21 trillion. And have you seen that in the news headlines lately, friends?
Well, nope. But if $5 trillion, if $21 trillion is not a problem, why is $5 trillion a problem? We could just steal another $5 trillion and fund the pension funds, right? What's the problem?
Well, you only named 2 departments, too, DOD and HUD.
I haven't surveyed the rest, so God knows what else is missing. But we gave the banks, or lent the banks, $24 trillion. So why is $5 trillion? If you add the money missing from HUD and the bailouts, that's $50 trillion. $5 trillion is only 10% of that. What's the problem? Why is this such a big crisis?
It's amazing.
It's very important to look at the number. One of the graphs I use in the article, I don't know if you saw it down near the section called the bottom line, is it says, stay calm and do math.
I did see that. That's a cute expression.
Yeah, it's very important. Let's do the math. Why are we so hysterical about an underfunding of $5 trillion when $21 trillion missing from DOD and HUD is not a problem?
All true. Let me read just a little from Catherine's magnum opus here for this round. Our planetary governance and financial system currently operates significantly outside of the law. Oh, big surprise. Whether the cost of war, organized crime, corruption, environmental damage, suppression of technology, or secrecy, this lawlessness and the lawlessness it encourages in the general population represents a heavy and expensive drag on all aspects of our society, our economy, and our landscape. The underfunding of pension funds in the United States is a symptom of that drag. It is not a self-contained crisis.
Right. So can I bring up a few numbers?
You better.
Okay, so the section number 5 is on performance. Okay? Mm-hmm. And the performance of the last 10 years. So I have the average annual investment return from 2007 to 2016. Now, during that period, the U.S. stock market, the S&P 500, was up 8.8%. And the aggregate bond ETF was up 4.4%. And if you do a 40-60 portfolio, it was up 7%. average annual return from 2007 to 2016. Okay, now let's look at some pension funds. During that period, the UK pension funds were returned 7.2%. The Canadian returned 5.5%. Australia returned 5.6%. New Zealand returned 5.6%. Guess what the U.S. returned?
I'm looking at it. I know.
2.1%.
Lowest. It's the lowest in the whole lineup.
Well, it's low by a lot. I mean, it's 25% of what the...
Even Switzerland beat us, too. Switzerland's, fairly competent.
Yeah, well, Switzerland is managed very conservatively, but they also had huge negative interest rates during that period, and they still outperformed us. It's quite remarkable. One of the reasons was the financial crisis. During the financial crisis, our pension funds dropped more than double of the drops of pension funds around the world. Now, I will tell you why they dropped, or one of the reasons why they dropped, and I'll do it by telling you a story of what happened to me in 1998. In 1998, I was working with a group of the top pension fund leaders in the country, including the president of CalPERS, the California Fund.
CalPERS, yeah.
CalPERS, and I made a presentation to him, to the board or this group, about how we could re-engineer government spending from a negative return to a positive return. So I've always told the story about how we were spending $250,000 at HUD to rehab or construct public housing, when $50,000 would buy and rehab a single-family home in the same 4-block area. So we could get 5 homes for the price of one. In fact, I took it to the person who was the assistant to the guy running the program, and I showed them the numbers, and they turned bright red, got very angry, and said, but if we did that, how would we generate fees for our friends?
He said that.
Yeah. So you have a negative return on government investment for many different reasons. But if you could turn that positive, the wealth creation was going to be enormous, and it was going to be enormous for the pension funds who needed it if they were going to make the boomers' retirement. So I took the presentation, and the president of CalPERS looked at me shocked when I got to sort of the conclusion. He looked at me and he said, "You don't understand, it's too late." I said, "What do you mean it's too late?" He said, "They've given up on the country. They're moving all the money out starting in the fall."
They being?
He didn't say. The one thing he said is, you've got to get to your old partner, Nick Brady, who'd been the chairman of
Nicholas
Reed,
Brady.
But then became Secretary of the Treasury in the Well, he went in at the end of Reagan and then was the Secretary of Treasury during the Bush administration. Anyway, so he said you've got to get to Nick and persuade him to, that they've got to change their minds, that it's not hopeless. Anyway, I thought he meant that the pensions were going to start investing in the emerging markets and globalization was going to proceed. I was completely wrong, because that fall was the beginning of fiscal 1998. It starts at October 1, 1998, and that is when all the money started to go missing from DOD and HUD.
That was it, huh? Wow.
They pulled it. They basically took the capital that they had stored, and what they did was they levered up the country and sucked all the money out. I mean, think of this. Pretend, just go into the invention room with me, and pretend for a second that all the people in America are rolling up their savings and they're putting it in a pension fund, and then the government gives the pension fund a treasury security that has a very low interest rate in exchange for the money, and they take the money and they just send it out the back door of DOD and HUD to wherever the $21 trillion went. So now the real money's gone, and what we have in our pension funds is a piece of paper that is an IOU from ourselves.
Yeah. Clever.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Right, and here's the thing. The $21 trillion that's missing from DOD and HUD, whatever the real amount is, because all of those are accounting figures, the $21 trillion that's missing, $21 trillion is $1 trillion more than the outstanding debt of the United States.
Right.
So imagine, if you will, just let's pretend, you issue $21 trillion of treasuries and get real savings from real people and real governments and real pension funds, and then you just take the money out the back door.
That's probably exactly what happened.
You know, I don't know what happened, because there's certainly been a lot of money going through the overt budget as well, that goes out. I mean, we now have, I think, 75 million people on Medicaid. So there's plenty of money going out the front door, and that's part of the problem. I mean, basically we're running the entire economy through the federal budget, and we've turned into a Soviet economy, and it's terrible, because instead of optimizing through merit or performance or price, you've got horrible centralization and privilege.
Soviet economy. Wow.
Right.
I never thought I'd hear that. We got
50% or more of every county budget or county economy is basically coming directly or indirectly from federal money, federal subsidies, federal contracts to
50%.
corporations. Yeah, 50% or more.
How can that be? How can counties have become so incompetent and inept that they get that much money? They have to have it. Or
I'll tell you why. Because I've been on the board of private organizations or involved in municipalities, and when the government comes around with grants to try and buy everybody, and I have fought. I can't tell you how many organizations I've resigned for because they were going to take federal government money. And a great ally of mine says all government money comes with a sock in the jaw, because it comes with conditions and rules and regulations that ultimately make it more expensive to take the money than to just do it yourself. When my company, Hamilton Securities, was in Washington, we had a deal with the Department of Labor where essentially they paid half and we paid half, and it was a 3-year deal, 2 years with an option to renew. And after the second year, I said I would rather fire them and pay 100%, because 100% without them is cheaper than doing 50% with them.
Wow. It sounds, when we come back, it almost sounds like a loose parallel with student loans and the indenturing of our future.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, we will. Catherine and I will be right back. Don't go away. Okay, and we're back with Catherine. Now, this issue of student loans, one of the most disgusting, vile traps and entrapments, it's theft. It's theft of the lives of people I've ever seen.
This is the worst thing. I thought the housing bubble was pretty terrible, but this is the worst thing. And, Jeff, I wrote an article you might want to republish called Bill Diefenderfer, the Economic Hitman of Student Loans, because I used to be on the board.
Give us the title one more time.
Bill Diefenderfer, it's William Diefenderfer, the political hitman or the economic hitman of student loans.
Okay, go ahead.
I used to be on the board of Sallie Mae. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I was on the board of directors of Sallie Mae way before they privatized.
Uh-huh.
And, in fact, I had a confrontation with the management who then privatized them. And it was really a difference over values. It was very funny. I tell it in the story. But here's what's interesting. It was one of my partners I had on the board of Hamilton Securities who replaced me, and I believe it was him who figured out how to get the laws changed so they could make more money from bankrupting a child than they could from the child paying the loans off. So they could make more money from kids failing than from kids succeeding.
That's as
and it was intentional.
That's evil.
They knew, no, but these guys knew exactly what they were doing, and they knew how to engineer it, and they did it. And Diefenderfer was one of the, Diefenderfer, when it came to engineering litigation like that, was brilliant. He'd been the deputy director of the Office of Management and Budget. And one of the things I describe in the article was why people like William Diefenderfer are still socially acceptable. I mean, why does anybody talk to them? Why does anybody associate with them? I mean, the reality is when you do this to an entire generation of children, you destroy our future. Those children are our future. And when you destroy the younger generation, you destroy the future itself.
That's future suicide now.
Right.
Yeah, the article is here. I'll put it up tonight again. You wrote this 7 years ago, believe it or not.
Right. Right.
Okay, this whole thing in the last 7 years has even gotten worse. As she just said, Bill Diefendorfer was Dick Darman's deputy at the White House Office of Management and Budget, OMB, when I served as Assistant Secretary of Housing. I like the people at OMB, but from there, you just heard where this whole thing under Diefendorfer went. Now, here's another story. How families end up with massive student loan debt. You've heard the horror stories, $50,000 in student loan debt, $100,000 in student loan debt, even $250,000 in student loan debt. But how does it happen? According to the College Board, the average undergrad tuition for 2014-2015 was only $9,100 for a public 4-year school. That means a 4-year degree should only cost about $36,500. So where is all of this debt coming from? And why are families struggling to pay it off? And he goes on and explains it. But there it is.
Right. And you should, in the Diefendorfer article, what you'll see is there's a chart that shows how tuition prices have risen way beyond the CPI rises. So it's quite extraordinary the way the universities have pumped up particularly the private universities have pumped up their tuition. And
they knew there was a cash cow, back on cows again. They knew there was a cash cow moseying over to their property. You bet.
Right, but it really is an entrapment, and I'll tell you why. I was working, and I tell this.
Excuse me. Isn't this a felony entrapment? Really?
Yes. Well, what I would say it's fraudulent inducement.
Fraud at the inducement is a felony if it's big enough, and this is huge.
Fraudulent inducement. But what it means is that if you fraudulently induce somebody, then they don't really owe you the money. Now, here's why it's a fraudulent inducement. And I have an online book called Dillon Read and Company and the Aristocracy of Stock Profits. And I describe in there why it is a fraudulent inducement. In addition, in the pension fund article, there's a video of Sir James Goldsmith arguing against globalization. Mm-hmm. And both my online book, Dillon Read, and then the Sir James Goldsmith video explains totally clearly that we knew globalization was going to wreck the middle class if we didn't do something. And so I was working with a group of people and the pension funds to make sure that globalization, that the middle class would, what I would call jump the curve, be successful in globalization. And we knew what we had to do, whether it was to take care of the pension funds or to make sure people paid down their debt, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the reality is everyone knew that if the students went to school and took out a lot of debt and took the same old curriculum, the jobs and income wouldn't be there to pay that back. They knew. They knew.
How evil.
Knew they had to change. They knew they had to change the curriculum. They knew they had to tell the middle class to pay down their debt, not take on more debt. They knew they could have told both the parents and the kids what they needed to come out the other side of their education highly successful and relevant. And instead, they entrapped them. Because if you think they wasted their money and their debt capacity, do you have any idea how much time they wasted? Not getting the education that they needed.
I've said many times on this program, if Trump or anyone else in that office cared about this country, they would write off and shut down the student loan program as an investment in America's future.
One of the latest headlines is the administration is considering changing the provision so students can extinguish debt, the student loans in bankruptcy.
Well, whoever brought that up is a real American.
They're a real American, or they want to win the election.
Well, that too.
They want to win the 2018 elections. Yeah, they have to do something about this because you cannot make America great again if you're going to destroy the next generation
for no
reason.
No. You can't do it. Not possible. Not possible. Trump has missed so many opportunities. I'll be kind right now.
Well, here's the thing. It's hard to be kind, I know. But I've spent time in the sausage factory, and one of the things I know is you can't get done everything you want to get done. And if you look at what he's up against, it's enormous. And what I will tell you this.
I think the man's lucky to be alive. Anyway, go ahead.
I think he's very lucky to be alive. Although I think the generals who got him in there, know how to protect him. But I think if you look at what has happened compared to what would have happened if Clinton had won, we are significantly better off for Trump having won.
So far, is she going to run again?
No.
Who's going to run?
I don't know, but you're seeing a real fight in the Democratic Party to try and get rid of the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And they're having trouble getting rid of the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs don't want to leave.
She's still talking like a candidate in the future. I'm telling you, I hear her talking like she's not going away.
I don't know what to tell you. I think the chances, if you have burned your investors, do you know how badly she burned? You've got people laundering money through the Clinton Foundation all around the world who are going to get paid back when she gets in.
Uh-huh.
So you've got countries all around the world who got totally burned.
Yeah.
And you've got, all the big Democratic investors who got totally burnt, and now they've got a real food fight, and they're getting purged. So when someone fails to perform as badly as she did, I have to tell you, forget for a second what we think of her, what we think of, the merits of the situation. Just look at this as politics.
Mm-hmm.
That was the worst run campaign that I have ever seen in my entire life.
I can't think of a worse one. I agree. It was outrageous, a joke, beyond a joke, pathetic.
Right.
John Podesta.
And here's what I don't understand. If you look at the experience that Hillary Clinton and her group have, you just all you can say is the hubris got out of control.
Out of control and ate the donors. This is. I still just when I hear her talk, I hear candidate Clinton. I don't think she's going to go away easily, quietly. They're going to have to blast her out of there. I still think she's got illusions. Bernie's got big trouble now. He'd like to run again. It ain't going to be Pocahontas. So is it going to be the senator from California? I can't remember her name, but I don't know. I just don't know who they're going to throw up against Trump.
I don't know. I think it's just way too early to tell. Right now, the big question is you've got the congressional races and you've got 30-plus senators and 30-plus governors.
Big
so that's
midterms.
A lot of turf.
Yeah,
it's a big midterm, and there's a lot of turf to be fought over. So, right now you've got to really focus in short on the 2018 elections.
I'm watching to see. Go ahead.
Well, once you emerge from those, you'll see a much clearer picture as to whether that's going to clean out a lot of the dinosaurs or not.
I agree. We have a tradition in this country of returning 94 to 96% to Congress and the Senate every midterm. That's what we do.
Right.
I'll be interested to see if Hillary starts if some candidates will accept her help. If she starts hitting the campaign trail for certain people, she's got so many markers out there now. And more, as you just pointed out, because of losing, she's got enemies all over the globe. I don't know. I just don't. This whole thing it's almost imponderable to me. It's too convoluted. It's too weird.
Here's the challenge. You've had since 1947 growing secrecy. And the money to finance the secrecy in the national security state exploded after 9/11, and it's kept exploding. And the political mechanism has proven itself incapable of putting the brakes on it. And so even under Trump, we're seeing, if you look at the explosion that's happening in the funding of the military, rather than re-engineer the scope or re-engineer how they're doing things, they just, put the pedal to the metal and
they haven't slowed down a bit. I've watched it. I know.
Right.
It's
we're in the process of slamming the fixed income markets, which we're going to get slammed anyway, but now we're really slamming them. And that's where it's going to come out, Jeff. It's going to come out in terms of the debasement of the currency and the fall in the dollar and interest rates. So, slowly what you're starting to see, I don't know if you've been watching the steps that China and Russia and the BRICS have been taking to build financial liquidity away from the U.S. and away from the dollar. It's quite extraordinary.
Yep.
And when it goes up the S-curve, it hasn't gone up the S-curve, but when it goes up the S-curve, you are going to feel it. Right now we're operating at probably 9-10% inflation a year. That's going to just kick up and kick up, and we're going to feel it. That's a real figure,
9 to 10.
Right. And people, one of the reasons you're seeing so much stress is no one can cover their overhead. The cash flows are getting squeezed in all these different areas, except where that military money is rolling and the corporate repatriation money is rolling. But other than that, you've got squeeze.
You know what else
is telling? The average household's getting squeezed.
Well, I was just going to tie it into that. What's getting squeezed is the average American disposable income. I don't know what percentage is left, maybe 15, 20% of what they used to have. It's not there.
Right.
No disposable income. Brick and mortar dies. What's left of small business dies. It's all imploding.
Well, not all. Actually, small business was very heartened by the Trump victory.
Oh, I remember
very
that.
Heartened by the tax reform.
I know. But has it played out? Has it played out?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet, because the repatriation of cash will bring tremendous liquidity into this country. It's going to kick up inflation.
Is that on his agenda?
He's done it. The corporations are committing to.
How much has really come back? Really? How much?
Oh, I think a great deal will come back, and I'll tell you why.
It's coming.
The reason Trump won is you have the line military who knows they cannot afford for the national security state to have long supply lines. They're not just bringing the money back, they're bringing operations back. Why do you think they just cleared enough land in Northern California to build Silicon Valley North? Because they need a couple 100,000 acres for a lot of operations that they're bringing back.
What are they bringing back,
Catherine?
China? What are they bringing back?
They're bringing them back from Asia. They're bringing them back from all over the world.
So some of these 150 countries that we have bases in, they're going to start shutting these bases down?
I don't know if they're going to shut the bases down, but they're not going to do high-tech. They're not going to do high-tech manufacturing. They've busted the unions, Jeff, and now they have robotics and AI, and they can bring it back, and they can do it here.
Well, if they don't bring it back, I guess we can call Forest Lawn. But you're right. That's
but let me focus you again on what happened. The fires in California.
Yeah.
If you're the defense industry in LA and you need to expand, and your Silicon Valley is busting at the seams down in San Jose, they need a jump the curve plan. If you're going to bring lots of capacity back, both in LA and San Francisco, how are you going to get that capacity? Well, look at what happened with the fires. Pull out a map, look up 101.
Right.
It's real simple. Just go from Santa Rosa over to Davis at the University of California at Sacramento and build a whole Silicon Valley north from Santa Rosa and 101 up, across to Sacramento. And then you've got a line from Santa Rosa to Sacramento to Reno. And you build that all out.
Interesting. That's what you're hearing?
No, I'm just looking at where look at
where it has
the fires.
To go. I got it.
Yeah, look at the fires. Somebody wanted a couple 100,000 acres. Right?
Yeah, very good. Who was it that just bought a big chunk of land? Doggone it.
I'll tell you a little factoid. Between 2007 and now, if you read the land report, which is a big report on the top 100 landowners, the top 100 landowners have doubled their holdings.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Right. And, think of the United States. We have a secure border to the north. We have an ocean to the right and an ocean to the left. And on the southern border, Trump wants to build a wall. And what I'm telling you is they're pulling the supply lines back and they're building Fortress America.
I'm all for it. We don't even need a wall. And my plan is, illegal aliens in this country kill over a dozen Americans every day. My idea is you pull back X number of troops, you put them on the border with all the high-tech drones, infrared this, infrared that. You give notice. Beginning in 2 weeks, we will shoot to kill anyone trying to come across the border. It may sound harsh. I guarantee you, after 8 or 10 or 12 are shot, there won't be anybody else coming. We can easily deploy this force to defend that border. We don't need to build a wall. We don't need it.
True. That's true. I'm not arguing for the wall, but what I'm telling you is, if you look at what they're doing something in anticipation of what the world's going to look like 5 or 10 years from now.
See, now I want to thank you for this, because I hadn't thought along those lines of Fortress America. I'm not seeing it yet. You're seeing it much better than I probably ever will. But to hear this gives me a little cause for optimism. I like Fortress America. The president, Mr. Trump, we have a national security issue here which needs to be addressed. It's called the United Nations Refugee Program that you must stop. We cannot continue to pack our cities with like 120,000 Somalians who are third world, don't want anything to do with our culture, and they're on all welfare benefits possible, and that's just one city. This has to stop. Fortress America cannot continually take on new refugees and pay for everything they have.
Now,
Can't do it.
Don't you think that Trump has done a fairly good job of trying to turn that train?
He's slowed it, but he can declare a national emergency. He can pull us out of the United Nations. He can cancel participation with that UN refugee program right now. He can do that. That's a presidential directive. He's not doing it yet. Maybe it'll happen. I don't know. I'm sick and tired of hearing that the Democrats want all of these people in here so they'll get more votes. I think it's more evil than that.
Right, I agree with you.
They've got the damn thing so rigged now, they don't need these people to vote. There's something going on.
But the problem is not, the Democrats and the Republicans are not the people controlling things.
Of course not.
Right now you have a highly centralized capital model.
Yes.
And if you look at the people who control the money, it's highly centralized.
Yeah.
Now, here's a point I want to make, because it relates to how to reposition the country for the next 5 to 10 years. This change happened after a very important event. What was that event? It was the death of David Rockefeller. Mm-hmm. I would say that was one of the most important events of 2017, because you're talking about, basically, if you read David Talbot's book, The Devil's Chessboard, which I think is the best book ever written on the Kennedy assassination, David Rockefeller was basically the guy who gave the final kill order of Kennedy. And this country has been run by the people who killed Kennedy since 1963.
Right.
And with that generation passing out of power, so you have Bush now passing out of power, you have David Rockefeller who's died, you have a real scramble for power and a new generation moving up. And that generation has a very different idea of how things had run, and they've got their hands on some very powerful technology.
Technology that you have a good guesstimate of, and I have a reasonably good guesstimate of, and it is far down the road from where they will ever admit. They're way down the road. You talk about the deep space program and all that. And Catherine's not joking. You people who listen to this program know I've had William Tompkins on. We talked all about this in great detail.
Right.
And it's the real deal. Well, thank you again, as always. You just evoked my eyes again. I like this Fortress America thing. I'm going to pop this up on on YouTube.
Well, you just have to keep looking at the money. You know, I'm a portfolio strategist.
Yeah.
So I look at all the money. And if you look at all the moves they're making, they're talking about shifting. They're shifting trillions of dollars.
Yeah. Well, they've got to do something about this refugee issue. It's a real cancer on the body of American culture, and we can't do this. We can't do this. It's got to stop. So let's hope that he stops it. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Jeff.
Stay well. Take care.
Have a wonderful day.
Thanks. Good night. Catherine Austin Fitz.